Oh yeah.
The wicker man's upper thighs. Red hair like this is referenced in the
It's one of the
Giant's
giants, the
engraving,
fire giants.
which reads, "Every giant is red of hair," and Radigan was said to have despised his own red
Yeah.
locks. Perhaps that was a curse of their kind. Incidentally, the red hair here is just one of many symbols in the trailer that are considered blasphemous over in the lands between. Omen horns, for example, are another such symbol of despised beings under the Golden Order. And
I'm
those
listening to Vadi
references,
video while I
here
work
on the
on my
Wicker Man, here on the
character.
Lion Dancer, here on these enemies, and
I
even
can turn
on
it
the
down if it's
glowing moon
distracting.
bear thing, which also has that red hair. Then there's this hippo thing that's using an aspect of the crucible, which were also aspect.
Yeah, Vadi video is great. Well, why not pull them up on my PC here? We can talk about Elden Ring while I spin in circles with a floating eyeball over here. See, there's like an eyeball, there's like a nose. So I don't know what these are or where they came from. Come on, stand up. Stand up, girl. You got this. Ah! Hi, everybody. Welcome to my stream. This is Maddie's Fractal Jello's Gender Bending Reality special. I'm your host. I'm Maddie. Hey. On tonight's show, we've got anything can happen. Oh, that's embarrassing. Filming in my just my top half again. That's whew, caught on camera, everybody. Uh, like I said, hi, I'm Maddie. Tonight we've got a special show for you. This is my debut show. My arm is really stiff. Um, I'm going to be making some self improvements. I'm having quite a makeover at the moment. Uh, things are things are fine. So thanks. I hope you stick around. We've got a lot for you this evening. Um, I'm going to try to stop saying because that's the world's oldest vocal screw up when you're public speaking. My arm. Put that away. Mm. My desk is like alive. um. Hey, look, we're getting some of the desk. Can you show the sign? Ah! So there's a sign on the desk, and I worked really hard on it. I worked really hard on all this, but it's not quite ready yet. We're still under construction. Maybe I'll get a construction worker's hat as I float around here in space, trying to get things bolted to the ground. I am working on the gravity. I'm working on my appearance. I still need to put my face on. I'm having trouble with my vision. Looking left, looking right is incredibly difficult, no matter what I do. But this is it. This is version. That eyeball. It's coming this way. Ew. Ew, 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 ew. Oh, I'm having trouble down here. Oh. Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna maybe take off for a minute and then see what happens. Watch some Vadi video, and we'll come back and see if things are bolted down. All right, BV, roll that clip. It's taking him a second. I tell you, things are still in development here. Okay, so you gotta bear with. My I'm waiting for my monitor. I don't even have a monitor on my desk right now. Looking, I really want to know why my arm isn't moving. All right, let me work on the rig while you guys. Where's my video? What's happening? Why does this always happen when I go start streaming? Because I don't prepare enough? Could that possibly be it? Yeah. Maybe. Streaming. Boom. Vati.
Our story doesn't begin in the lands between. It begins in the
Secrets in the shadow of the Erd tree. I'll show the ads so Vati gets credit for the ads.
So the gameplay trailer for the Shadow of the Erd Tree DLC just dropped, and it's also extremely story heavy.
Pure and radiant, he wields love to strike clean the hearts of men.
And this is very much the story of Mikola. Let's learn what we can.
How's the audio?
You'll recognize Mikola's cocoon here. It's located in Mogwin Palace, and that is the DLC access point that will give way to this. What they're calling the Land of Shadow, a place that you can explore on June 21st as long as you've defeated Moog and Radahn. According to Miyazaki, the DLC is at least the same size as Limgrave in the base game, and this will be their largest DLC to date.
In that forsaken place, blood must spill. Blood of your fellows. They are true faithful.
Interviews also reveal that there will be 8 new weapon categories and at least 10 new bosses.
They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of a war.
Enemies here are the vestiges of a war that occurred in the Land of Shadow long ago. They've just been obscured by the Erd Tree until now. So many feature designs that would be considered cursed or blasphemous in the lands between, and there's no better example of that than the newest member of Marika's family, Messmer.
Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?
We're entering the DLC as a Tarnished that was sanctioned to become Elden Lord, but it seems events in the base game might pale in comparison to what's playing out here with Mikola, who arrived long before we did.
I presume you, too, are keen to know just what kind Mikola is doing here.
So let's talk about everything. I have analyzed every frame, translated every interview, and kind of haven't slept in 2 days, so good night, and I hope you enjoy.
Those stripped of the race of gold shadow meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame.
Come now. Touch the withered arm and travel to the realm of shadow. I will not be far behind. May we meet again.
I'm doing something here. Let's see, we're on the extended monitor. I'm going to add a window capture. What if I go into Adobe Character Capture? What is my stream output looking like here? That's definitely not what I want to show. If I could do a window capture, theoretically I shouldn't need it to be big to capture it. This window ain't got no name. There's got to be a way to do this. Well, I liberated my left arm. Still no left hand. Just floating around in circles with half my body hanging on for dear life. I could sleep like this. Would you float like this if you had like weights on your wrist in space? Is this like how you would spin? How does that work? Because you're weightless in space, but you're not massless. Whoa, dig that trick. I'm an Olympic gymnast now. In outer space, everyone would be like an amazing gymnast. Think about it. Like you could get it would be like a whole new art form. Zero G ballet. Do 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 do. Hold it at the top. Hold it at the top. No, get your other arm extended. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Hey, my head's not coming off. Hey, everybody, my head's not coming off. Oh my god, I'm spinning, I'm dancing, and my head's not coming off. Oh, my face is sliding around, though. My face sliding around a lot. Whoa, dubbity. Whoa. Yeah, I look like a different person when I spin. Well, I guess maybe, hey, your face deforms when you running man it down a slide in a rocket pod. Oh, I need to put that vape animation in there pretty soon. Well, this is good. I feel good about this. Mostly. Aside from the spitty stuff. Oh, everybody missed my ballet. I was recording the wrong thing. I think I'm still recording the wrong thing, honestly. I don't know what's going on. This was my ballet, everybody. Look. Whee! Hi, I still don't have a hand. I'm pretty happy. This is what I was talking about when I was spinning. Look at this. Look, check it out. Chicken, chicken dance, go the chicken spin. Chicken spin and chicken, chicken spin. Chicken, chicken spin. That's my chicken spin. Well, look at my lovely new desk, won't you? Got to clean it up a little bit. We'll have it, be looking good. So that's right. Well, this has got to go. Get out of here. Get out of here. Go. All right. Well, we're gonna watch some more Vadi video, and I'm gonna try to get rid of the eyeball. Let's see. Extend screen. Computer. Placement for Elden Ring.
Before we break down the story, I'm going to highlight what I think are 3 of the biggest gameplay details that I found hidden in some translated interviews. First, Elden Ring's DLC will actually feature a new power scaling feature that will come into play while you're in the Land of Shadow. Here, our character will be able to upgrade their attack power in a way that is separate from your rune level. Let me explain that. So, Miyazaki mentions that this system is somewhat similar to how attack power works in Sekiro. In Sekiro, you don't level attributes to do more damage like you would do in Elden Ring. Instead, your attack power can be raised by defeating certain bosses and claiming their memories. So, a system like this is being added to Elden Ring, and it will be a new way to get stronger in the DLC. In addition to using runes to level up, as you're used to. The reason this is being added is because From Software know that there are a lot of players who will be going into the DLC at high levels with their completed characters. And so instead of having players with completed characters just steamrolling the content, they want players to have that classic experience of struggling against bosses and needing to explore other areas to get stronger.
Hang on a second, I want to make sure I got something going on here. There we go. Now you can kind of see what I'm doing.
And to try again. So, by adding a new attack power resource, and hopefully also by scaling our characters appropriately, I think this idea could be genius. And it's especially important for a game like Elden Ring to have this, because this game will live or die by the enormous, expansive world it has, and you need to want or need to explore that world. Next, of course the DLC will be getting many new weapons, but most interesting is that these new weapons span 8 new weapon categories. Elden Ring already had a ton of weapon types, so getting 8 more is actually kind of insane. So far we know 6 of these new categories. One is the dueling shield, which combines offense and defense. Another are these reverse grip swords that we see being wielded in this clip. And then there's weapons that enable a martial arts style, reminiscent of the Dragon Bone Fist from Dark Souls 2, or the Senpo monks from Sekiro. Miyazaki also mentions a large Japanese sword and a new large sword, whatever that means. But personally, I'm most excited for these. These are equipable throwing weapons where all of your melee attacks are thrown attacks. Elden Ring always had really smooth, ranged gameplay, but the weapons were so bad that it just wasn't worth playing, so I really hope these are viable. Anyway, the third gameplay point I want to mention is that, again, Miyazaki says that the DLC area should be at least the same size as Limgrave. But you need to bear in mind, this is coming from the same humble man who told everyone that Elden Ring would take about 30 hours to complete. so I wouldn't be surprised if Miyazaki is underselling the size of the DLC here, if anything. But that's enough about gameplay for now. Let's talk lore. Shortly after the DLC trailer released, I received an email from Namco Bandai about it, and they included this short poem. It reads, "The Land of Shadow, a place obscured by the Erd Tree, where the goddess Marika first set foot, a land purged in an unsung battle, set ablaze by Mesmer's flame. It was to this land that Miquella departed, divesting himself of his flesh, his strength, his lineage, of all things golden. And now Miquella awaits the return of his promised lord." Let's break that down, starting with the Land of Shadow. According to interviews with Miyazaki, the Land of Shadow is a place that has become physically disconnected from the Lands Between. So this isn't an alternate version of the Lands Between, nor does it seem like we'll be going backwards or forwards in time to access the DLC for once. And that is refreshing compared to past From Software DLCs. I am excited for a DLC that will expand on the present world for once, rather than a past or future world. That said, if anything, the Land of Shadow will definitely contain many remnants of the past, as it is a place obscured by the Erd Tree, where the goddess Marika first set foot. If this place can be obscured simply because the Erd Tree exists, then I lean towards thinking that this might have always been some sort of shadowy dimension, rather than once physically being a part of the Lands Between landmass, although there is a nicely sized gap right in the middle of the Lands Between where this might fit. But I think the Erd Tree does generate a ton of light, so the idea of a Land of Shadow being obscured by the Erd Tree kind of makes a lot of sense. As for why this place became obscured by the Erd Tree, I think we can lay the blame squarely at the feet of Marika, since the age of the Erd Tree is her age, after all, and this age only came about when she ascended to godhood and became the vessel of the Elden Ring. The biggest part that's always been missing from Marika's story is what happened before she became a god, and the shadow of the Erd Tree seems to hide the answers to that exact question, since the poem calls the Land of Shadow the place where the goddess Marika first set foot. Marika setting foot in this place before setting foot in the Lands Between makes a lot of sense, because we've always known that Marika isn't from the Lands Between. She's a part of the Numen race, and the Numen are said to have come from outside the Lands Between. The character creator calls the Numen supposed descendants of denizens of another world, so either this other world is the Land of Shadow, and Marika originates from there, or Marika comes from somewhere outside the Lands Between and outside the Land of Shadow, but simply set foot in the Land of Shadow before venturing to the Lands Between. Either interpretation could be true at this point, I think. At any rate, it seems like the Land of Shadows is extremely important to Marika's past. Miyazaki drops a huge detail on that note, stating that the Land of Shadows is the place where Marika became a god, and the Golden Tree was born. I can't wait for the DLC to elaborate on those circumstances. When Marika did claim the Elden Ring, her most significant act was removing the Rune of Death from it. Afterwards, many previous cultures of death were rendered obsolete, as souls were now supposed to return to the Erd Tree. So, if souls started to return to the Erd Tree, where they were presumably reborn, where were souls going before that? Now, this is just speculation, but is it possible souls once went to the Land of Shadow? Could the Land of Shadow once have been a sort of afterlife? As evidence for this claim, consider that A. Miquella only managed to depart to the Land of Shadow when he divested himself of his grace and his flesh, So his death led to him being here. Next, trailer dialogue explains that those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Mesmer's flame. So those who are stripped of the grace of gold have to meet death in this place. And the last bit of evidence for this speculation is that there already is a shadowy realm of death alluded to in Elden Ring lore, called the Helfen. So, since we know that the Erd Tree disrupted the previous cycles of death in the Lands Between, it definitely makes sense to me that the Erd Tree might obscure the Land of Shadow beyond just being a bright source of light. It might have replaced its existence as a sort of afterlife, but I could definitely be wrong on the afterlife stuff, so let me know what you think. At any rate, the Land of Shadow has now become relevant again.
Let's get a YouTube logo. I want everybody to know what I'm using. Oh, it's transparent. Man, I snagged like a really huge one. You use on like billboards. I'll have to get a new one. Finally, I've got one with a white background. It doesn't look like YouTube. It's like some kid redesigned YouTube's logo to suck. Oh my god. God damn it, it's transparent. Whoops. Used to, you couldn't find any transparent images on the internet. Now that's like all there is. Finally, people are wising up. Art teachers have taught people well. Sometimes you need a finished product. Jesus. YouTube blog. Not like YouTube needs the advertising. Oh, keep watching this video, I guess, because I'm getting
For
sidetracked with stuff.
the Tarnished have found a way to enter this forsaken place. The poem goes on to read, "A land purged in an unsung battle, set ablaze by Mesmer's flame." I interpret this as the land was purged in an unsung battle, and then it was set ablaze by Mesmer's flame. These seem to be two separate things. So first, let's talk about the war, the unsung battle. In an interview, Miyazaki references the war when he was asked about this Wicker Man enemy, and replies, "So this giant basket of flame was a terrible, gruesome weapon used in a war that occurred in the Land of Shadow. The kindling that you see is actually the remains of bodies that were put in there to burn."
I bet Elden Ring is a secret prequel to Demon Souls.
As for whose enemies were put inside the Wicker Man, I'd wager that it was Marika's enemies,
I think
since
this is the
she's
first
the one
flame.
who came out victorious
Frodo
as a
first
god,
flame.
and with the golden tree as well.
This thing will
Just
play an essential
speculation,
role in
though.
creating the first flame.
Zully the Witch points out that the Wicker Man traces its origins back to Celtic myth, where people were allegedly sacrificed within a wicker statue, and many other users have pointed out that this design may have instead been drawn from Berserk.
They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of a war.
If you look closely, you can actually see a mane of red hair attached around a face on the Wicker Man's upper thighs. Red hair like this is referenced in the giant's red braid, which reads, "Every giant is red of hair," and Radigan was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps that was a curse of their kind. Incidentally, the red hair here is just one of many symbols in the trailer that are considered blasphemous over in the lands between. Omen horns, for example, are another such symbol of despised beings under the Golden Order, and omen horns are seen here on the Wicker Man, here upon the Lion Dancer, here on these enemies.
And don't forget that Marika's guardian, Malekith, was a beast man. So she seems to come from an order of beasts. When the beastly ship, the beastness of them was outlawed because they were a different religion. They were a different one of those power sources, right? It creates their own religion. Like you had the void beast, the celestial beast, the whatever, the Esther, cosmic. Well, who's the Elden beast? Yeah, the Elden beast. You get these like idols, these icons that harvest these souls and these powers. They create an order, their own belief system, creation stories. They all get their own stuff, except the problem is they're not the only ones. So you literally have like Thor like punching over here in the head of, God. God, like, hey, I'm God, stop it. Stepping on him with his big giant feet. His thing is he's big and giant. Marvel superheroes are all getting destroyed by actual deities. I don't know what I'm talking about. But you got the one that like comes from outer space. It's like, oh, I'm a cosmic power. I'll create like a religion here on this planet, and people will worship me, and I'll, make love with the tree lady over there, and we'll create our own. And you've got the guy who made like a living off disease, and you got the girl who You know, the war guy. Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome how they do it. I just don't know how to define it. It's so interesting, but it's so simple at the same time. It's so well crafted. Um, I hope that's what it is. I really do. I hope it's a prequel. I hope it, just like The Hobbit, leads into Lord of the Rings as like a bigger world. Like if Dark Souls could be The Hobbit to the Elden Ring, that would be amazing. That would be the best video game franchise in history, linking them all together. And you could for sure still get Bloodborne in there, and probably even Sekiro. Absolutely Sekiro. Yeah, you say that's just happening on another planet out there. You know, I'm sure they could even tie, some kind of asteroid. There's probably Sekiro connections. I think they all take place in the same universe. And also throw in there Kingsfield. People forget about Kingsfield. But it's the same universe. It's got like Seath, it's got the Moonlight Greatsword, it's got everything. It's got the forlorn soldier, the sad soldier who's given up on everything. You've got the curses that get spread. You've got, I don't know, but I want to play Kingsfield 1 real bad and just do everything. I mean, parts of this game, parts of Elden Ring could be Kingsfield. It's not a stretch at all. Knights on horses riding around. Kingsfield gets weird real fast. There's little crawly plant monsters chasing you around. It's the first enemy you fight. It's a plant monster. Well, not a rat, not a goblin. It's a Venus flytrap. Bunch of them chasing you around a ruined village destroyed by a curse. In part 4 in Kingsfield 4. I want to play Kingsfield 1. I'll make that my mission today. I'm only going to do this for another hour. Alright, let's go. Keep watching.
And even upon the roaring rune bear thing, which also has that red hair. And then there's this hippo thing that's using an aspect of the crucible, which were also aspects that became despised and scorned. And then there's a spirit wielding the iron cleaver that's the signature weapon of the misbegotten, who were also despised. So lots of blasphemous symbols going on, but no character in the DLC has as many of them as Messmer, who is the character that is at the heart of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, maybe even more so than Miquella. This is the demigod who would set ablaze the land of Shadow.
Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?
So this is Messmer, and the mother he mentions is Queen Marika. An official interview makes this quite clear. To quote Miyazaki, "And you may have seen at the end of the trailer, there was this piece of key art where it shows Messmer sat in this throne-like chair, and people who've played the game may recognize this throne to be one of those from the boss room where you battle Morgoth, and this represents the thrones at the base of the Erdtree. And it's supposed to symbolize that Messmer stands on equal footing to these other demigods and children of Marika who sat around in these thrones and held the rooms of the Erdtree. So he is an important figure who rivals these other demigods. And as you play the DLC, you will learn a little about why he wasn't featured in the Legends of the Erdtree, the Lands Between. You'll realize why he exists in this shadow, this land of shadow. As to who Messmer's father is, well, there are many signs that they're a product of Radagon. For one, there's the red hair, and then there's the fact that Messmer's name starts with M, which suits the naming convention for the children of Marika Radagon, who are Miquella, Melania, and possibly Melina. Speaking of Melina, we've talked many times about the butterfly theory, which posits that all children of Radigan America have a butterfly of their own. Miquela's is the nascent butterfly, Melania's is the Aeonian butterfly, and since Melina is the kindling maiden, we've long speculated that hers was the smouldering butterfly, but now it seems that butterfly could belong to Mesmer instead, given his much more overt flame symbolism. That said, there is a fourth pink butterfly featured in the trailer now, so it's possible the butterfly theory might still have wings. If Mesmer was legitimately born alongside the other children of Marika Radigan, that actually places his existence a little bit later in the timeline, still in the age of the Erd Tree, but after Radigan left Renala for Marika. Whatever the case, Mesmer would find himself in the Land of Shadow, delivering death to those stripped of the grace of gold.
Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
Since this line is delivered by a third party, it seems there's a common belief here that
Yeah, the grace of gold. The gold is God. God is the Elden Beast. It is the power is the Elden Beast. It is the entire cosmic universe that stood up and went out for a walk and got in a fight with somebody.
Mesmer's role is to deliver death to those stripped of grace who find themselves in the Land of Shadow, including, apparently, our Tarnished, who finds themselves at odds with Mesmer.
Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?
In this dialogue, I think Mesmer is questioning why Marika has seen fit to restore grace to the Tarnished and sanction their lordship, guiding them to become Elden Lord, even though in his eyes we are bereft of light. Mesmer strikes me as a bit of a rebel and an outcast. He's not what you'd expect from someone who is clearly killing people who have been stripped of the grace of gold. But I do ultimately think that he holds Marika in high regard. I do think he's doing this on her behalf. The fact that he sits on a demigod's throne might be evidence enough, but in an excellent bit of photo manipulation by user Woosa69 on Reddit, we can clearly spy a statue of what seems to be Marika in the background. It has her signature braid and her armband as well, and uniquely, she's holding a baby who could be Mesmer, but that's just speculation. We know Marika uses people, even her enemies, even the blasphemous. She will keep a fire giant alive just so it can watch over something for eternity. She will disguise herself as Radigan, make her biggest rival fall in love with him, and then abandon that rival and undo them from within. She will condemn the misbegotten and then get one of them to craft weapons for a Tarnished so that they can become Elden Lord. So in a similar way, I feel like Mesmer being useful to Marika, despite very clearly being a blasphemous character, really isn't that strange. But what do I mean about Mesmer being blasphemous? Well, first, there's the snakes. According to the Gravekeeper cloak, the snake is viewed as a traitor to the Erd Tree, and now we don't know if they're talking about Mesmer's snake or the Great Serpent, which is what we assumed before. Whatever the case, there's no way that Mesmer's snakes would be looked upon favorably by the Golden Order. In the Erd Tree Colosseums, for example, the audience delighted in seeing the bronze snakes on the armor of the gladiators be beaten and battered. And then there's Mesmer's usage of flame. According to the Spark aromatic, fire was prohibited to those who served the Erd Tree. And while this rule was forgotten as the war drew ever on, I do think Messmer might have some links to the flame of the Fell God, if I had to guess. He's got the red hair, and snakes do appear on the Giant's Flame Forge in the mountaintops, but I'll admit these connections are pretty shaky. We don't know exactly what kind of flame Messmer is using just yet. Lastly, Messmer clearly has a connection to dragon communion, which is also something that's frowned upon. Dragon communion is the abhorrent act of consuming the hearts of dragons to commune with the ancient dragons and become more like them. According to the Magma Worm's Scale Sword, dragon communion is a grave transgression for which many partakers were cursed to crawl on their bellies as shadows of their former selves. As evidence for Messmer's communion, his one good eye is yellow and slitted, which is a clear symptom of consuming the dragon hearts that even our Tarnished gets afflicted with. And, not to mention, his winged armor looks a lot like the Drake Knight set, which is a set that labels the Drake Knights as partakers of communion. Then there's this symbol on the box art, and even the fire he conjures that looks a little bit like the dragon communion seal, but it's not a one-to-one match. And then serpents themselves are considered imperfect dragons, in Dark Souls lore at least, and Messmer's serpents are sprouting draconic wings, so there could be something there. On this promotional page, we also learn that Messmer's full title is Messmer the Impaler, and it could be that this name simply comes from his fighting style, but I will also point out, as many others have already, that there is a catacomb in the Lands Between called the Impaler's Catacombs. So it's possible he got this reputation from certain deeds that he committed in the Lands Between. Of all the characters I can think of, only the Fire Giants and Marika come to mind as ever being impaled. The Fire Giants' stakes aren't identical to Messmer's spear, but they are similar, and Marika being impaled at the end of the game never really had a good explanation, so maybe this is a chance for them to explain that, finally. So, in conclusion, I get the vibe that Messmer is this rebellious, kind of blasphemous child, but that they're still loyal and, more importantly, still useful to their mother, who is Marika. Though, of course, all my opinions and speculations in this video, especially, are very subject to change. Next, let's talk about Miquella. Miquella is many things. He is the demigod son of Queen Marika and her consort Radagon. He is Miquella the Nascent, cursed with eternal youth. He is Miquella the Unalloyed, who sought to find a cure for his sister's scarlet rot. He is Saint Trina, an alter ego who deals in sleep and dreams. And he is Miquella of the Halig Tree, a sort of Erd tree that he eventually embedded himself within. He's also the subject of an hour-long lore video on my channel, and I'm also going to be talking about him again later this week in a lore video about Moog, so please forgive me for being brief in my description of him here. Suffice to say though, Miquella is a very important demigod. He's also an Empyrean, which means he is a rare character eligible to become a god and succeed Queen Marika. Additionally, his sister says that
Empyreans, that's the word. That's the word. Yeah, you got a lot of pretenders to the throne here. None of these people are true Empyrean, which is why it's getting polluted and it's not working. The systems start breaking down. Like an Empyrean can establish their own order, their own realm of, like, this is how it goes. Like cycles of life and death. You know, am I a fungus? Am I a lightning bolt bug? Am I a human? Am I a beast? Am I a zombie? Am I an undead? Am I a whatever? Yeah. They've all got their own system. Some of them are weirder than others. But then you get these lower order creatures that try to make their own system. And then that never ends well.
that he is the most fearsome Empyrean of all, and that he possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. It's this allure that has led to his fate in the base game, which is to say, he appears to be dead at the hands of Moog, who is Miquella's demigod half-brother. Moog ripped Miquella's cocoon out of the Halig tree and abducted him. Now Miquella's cocooned flesh lies in Mogwin Palace, and his withered arm there will become the entrance to the DLC. Miyazaki elaborates on this point, stating that Miquella has traveled to the Land of Shadow for his own reasons, and it's up to the player to follow in his footsteps, as many other NPCs also have before you. The poem reads, "It was to this land that Miquella departed, divesting himself of his flesh, his strength, his lineage, of all things golden." The fact that Miquella has divested himself of his flesh reminds me a lot of Rani, who slays her own flesh intentionally in order to free her from the control of the two fingers. Through his own death, it seems, he has departed to the Land of Shadow, though now he is without his strength. He's also likely divested himself from his great rune, which is probably this one, seen here, which takes the same shape as this emote you get for pre-ordering, which is called Ring of Miquella. So all of this should explain why he needs you. The poem continues, and now Miquella awaits the return of his promised lord. If I had to guess...
That sounds so amazing. Very cool.
Where we're ultimately headed, it would be the castle here, right beneath the shadow of the Erd Tree. Here, an ark is catching the bounty of the Erd Tree, just like the rune arcs do, and the sky above is enwreathed by these ethereal cloth tapestries. According to Miyazaki, these tapestries are a veil, and they are a symbol of the Land of Shadows being hidden from the world outside. And speaking of veils, the Black Knives are assassins that are invisible due to their concealing veils, and we have a talisman that is a part of those veils, put together from dark cloth with a lustrous sheen that completely hides the wearer's presence. Earlier we talked about how Marika was likely responsible for the Land of Shadow being concealed or veiled, and according to the Black Knife armor, the Black Knives are rumored to be Newman who had close ties with Marika herself, so maybe we're already starting to understand the nature of this veil. That said, the way this veil is laid brings to mind a lot of things. At first it reminded me of Marika's bedchambers. Then I thought maybe it could represent Moog's bloody bedchamber, as he puts it. Or it could even represent the baldachins of the deathbed companions, which, according to the baldachin's blessings, are hidden temples in the guise of a bedchamber. This could represent Miquella's long-awaited rebirth, or maybe his eternal nascence. It could even represent the fact that he is Saint Trina, an alter ego that has to do with sleep and dreams. So many things. Speaking of Saint Trina, though, there's a brief shot of a masked character who looks like they're sleeping in a purple swamp. The droopy flowers in the background might be Saint Trina's lilies, and the purple haze of this swampy area definitely gives off sleep effect vibes. You might recall, when Rani first meets with you in Elden Ring, she does so amidst a mist, which has put Kale and his donkey to sleep nearby. And the more I think about it, the more I think this encounter might have to do with Miquella. In this moment, Rani gives you the spirit calling bell and 3 wolves, which she says are from Torrent's former master. And considering we see what looks to be Miquella riding Torrent here in the Land of Shadow, I think we can reason that Torrent is Miquella's steed, and thus that Miquella has given you gifts via Rani and favored you ever since the very beginning of the game. But the rabbit hole goes deeper, because Melina is the one who gives you Torrent's whistle at the start of the game. And since we've now learned that Torrent was likely in the Land of Shadow with Miquella, does that mean that Melina would have ventured to the Land of Shadow to retrieve Torrent from Miquella at some point? Remember, Melina's origins are largely unresolved in Elden Ring, so I really hope we learn more about her story in this place. The fact that she might have traveled to a land that's enwreathed in Messmer's flame might also explain why she's burned and bodiless, but now I'm just engaging in unhinged speculation, and these theories might have got out of hand. But let me do unhinged speculation on one more thing, and I want to draw your attention to the fact that we've learned that it's necessary to kill Radahn to access the DLC. That's curious. It seems to hint that his death is essential for events in the Land of Shadow to make sense. Logically, this would be related to the meteor shower that happens after you kill him, right? Because it's in this moment that the fate in the night sky is suddenly let free. Perhaps Melania was even chasing this world state where fate is freed from the night sky, and maybe she was sent here to kill Radahn on behalf of Miquella when she fought him all those years ago. What's crazy is we still don't know why Melania fought Radahn, so hopefully we get an answer for that as well. And of course, most of you won't have to worry about killing Radahn, as your characters are likely already at the end of the story. And speaking of the end of the story, Miyazaki's recent interview reveals that they don't currently have plans to make a second DLC for Elden Ring, so whatever ending that's coming with Miquella might be the final one. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's shaping up to be a good ending with Miquella.
Pure and radiant, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
To shrive is to hear confession, to assign penance and absolve someone. Sounds like a pretty harrowing process, and that is a perfect match for Miquella, who is described as both benevolent and fearsome. This is that ominous love of Miquella, which is a really unique vibe, and I'm very excited to see where things will go. Believe it or not, I've still got a lot of the trailer to break down, but first I'd like to finally reveal this. This is the Shadow of the Great Tree, a unique displate design that I wanted to create where you can flip it upside down and get a completely different perspective. There's two prints in one here. So this way, it's the giant tree with roots snaking through the city below in the second half. But put the other way, it's a city with the trees of the underworld holding up the world. This is all made possible thanks to Displate's innovative magnet system, where prints can be easily stuck onto walls in whatever orientation you'd like without damaging your walls at all. If you get in quick, you can get this print for 22% off with the link below, and if you add any other prints to that order, you'll get 33% off everything, no matter what else you add to your cart. I have a whole set of other prints that you can browse on my page, or you can even get official Elden Ring prints on display. So I'll leave a link to all of that in the description as well. Thank you for supporting my videos with any purchases you make. Let me quickfire some observations at you before I go, since there's a lot I couldn't quite fit into the previous parts of the video. First, this is my favorite enemy design in the trailer. Its body is actually made up of 3 or 4 robed humanoid beings, and they're all coordinating together to puppeteer this beast, just like the traditional lion dances from Chinese culture. It's amazingly inspired. According to Miyazaki, there was a culture that existed before the Golden Tree, and the lion dancer is derived from that culture. Next up, this character who sits alone in a room filled with debris. Quelaag over on YouTube has acutely noted that they look very much like the scholar who appears upon the carrion inverted statue, which is a key item given to you by Rani during her questline. The area they appear in seems to also feature the many bird cages of Raya Lucaria, so it's exciting to see that we might be learning more about some of the glintstone sorcerers. Next, this character wears the deep navy hood of expatriated royalty, and the hood was gifted to those who saw the guidance of grace, who then departed on missions to faraway lands, from which they would never return. They cast a completely new spell type, and in the background we see lion statues with omen horns, and the fact that these lions with omen horns are venerated might suggest that this was from a time when horns were seen as signifiers of the divine and not symbols of ill omen. Also, I was so excited to see this player cast these golden wings. We have many aspects of the Crucible spells, but we could never cast the wings, which until this point were only able to be utilized by the Crucible Knights. And I don't think that's the only new Crucible spell we're getting access to. A new screenshot shows the Tarnished using these golden porcupine spines, the same ones utilized by this deformed hippo enemy after it charges, and the sound it makes is just like a Crucible spell. But I wonder if this pot thrown by the player character is a spell or a consumable or a weapon art. And speaking of new screenshots, I want to know the story behind this guy. I will protect him with my life. It seems like he appears in this same field of blue flowers, which, if you look carefully, has that grave that has a hole in it that you find in Morn's castle. There's also, of course, this red dancer character. There are a couple of dancer characters in Elden Ring, so maybe she's related to that. Oh, and I also adore the design on this guy who is attempting this impossible task of
Yeah, this guy pulling the sword out of his own face.
wrenching a sort of spinal golden ribcage through a hole in his skull. Interested to see what happens after that. And if you look closely at his robes, you'll notice he's actually the same character as the man in this portrait at another point in the trailer. So there's clearly a story here, especially if they're worthy of a portrait, right? Next to this man is a woman who looks a little bit like a deathbed companion. The origins of the deathbed companions were alluded to in the base game, so it seems kind of fitting that we might explore those origins further in the Land of Shadow.
It would be interesting if the deathbed companion concept got passed on through all the ages of all the stories.
But who knows? I also wonder if this enemy could be a Knight of Radahn. They use gravitational magic, as a lot of his knights do. They're also armored somewhat similarly, and they ride a boar, and Radahn's helmet has boar-like tusks, so that might be a thing. But there's just too much to speculate over. Could this armor be related to the Knight's cavalry? This Twitter user points out that Messmer's statue looks a lot like the pose of the Cleanrot Knight. Is there a reason for that? Could these black knights with gold trim be related to Malekith? Are the people who are wearing masks part of House Mirai? Why is the top of this castle blackened and disintegrating into the sky? Why is there a line of birds standing before you in this swamp? Is this character afflicted by frenzy? Are they a worm face? Their posture is kind of similar. Are we getting Runebear communion spells? And a huge question, why does Messmer only have one functioning eye? So many questions, but I guess it'll have to wait. Subscribe for more Elden Ring lore in the coming weeks, and subscribe to keep up with all the biggest news regarding the DLC. Thank you to MissPap1 for helping me with the edit for this video, and thank you to all of those I referenced in this video and in the description. check out the new displate if you're interested, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
This is what 5 pounds of fat looks like. If we want to lose this or more, check this out.
Thinking about starting to run on the treadmill.
So you've become the Elden Lord, but before you it was Radagon, and before him it was Godfrey, who items call the first Elden Lord. And yet even before Godfrey there was another, Placidusax, an ancient dragon who ruled as Elden Lord in the prehistoric age before the Erd Tree. It's him and his kin that you're going to be learning about in this video. But to quickly summarize, first there were the ancient dragons, who had these stone scales that could twist time, making them essentially immortal. And yet some ancient dragons can be found dead, buried in the rocks of Farum Azula, which twists and crumbles in an eternal storm. On the ground, their descendants roam the lands between without the stone scales of their ancestors, and instead of stone scales, they've inherited aspects of their environments. The ice dragons roamed the icy mountaintops. The glintstone dragons feasted on sorcerers. One's hatred was so strong that he even endured the scarlet rot in Caelid. And it's here in Caelid that Grail, mother of all the mortal dragons, lies dying. There's a lot to talk about. This is the story of Elden Ring's dragons. Many item descriptions note that the age of the ancient dragons was prehistoric, and I think that's an important word because it might explain why Godfrey's recorded title is the first Elden Lord, even though he's not. Placidusax is. The word prehistoric denotes a period of time before written history, and while there are spoken legends from this time, I think what they're trying to get across is that the Elden Lord before Godfrey wouldn't be well known. This was before the age of the Erd Tree after all, and the Erd Tree would eventually come to be considered perfect and eternal. So the idea that there might have even been an Elden Lord that came before could have been considered irrelevant at best and sacrilegious, I think, at worst. But what really is an Elden Lord, and why was Placidusax considered one? I feel like the role of Elden Lord can be roughly narrowed down to 3 things. You are made eligible by A, your strength, B, your validity as a consort, and or C, your willingness to bring about a new age or order. Specifically, the Elden Lord is tasked with bringing about the Greater Will's order, one built around the Elden Ring that it sent here long ago, hence the name Elden Lord. Sounds simple, but then remember, the nature of the Greater Will's order can vary wildly, as is shown by all who come to champion it over the ages. The Greater Will's order is malleable enough that it can even accept a number of endings that our Tarnished brings about, where the Elden Ring is mended by runes that will dramatically redefine the world. So it is that our role as a Tarnished is actually pretty unique, as our primary goal now is to reunite the broken shards of the Elden Ring. With Marika, the god that is the vessel of the Elden Ring, locked away inside the Erd Tree, it's not up to her to will a new age into being, it's up to us, and we have to gather the great runes to do this. So it is that in most endings, you ascend the throne as Elden Lord alone, without a god or living consort by your side. Instead, your crumbling god is a vessel for your Elden Ring, and not much more. But previously, it seems an Elden Lord was chosen by their god, chosen for their strength, chosen to sire a lineage, chosen for their usefulness to their god's order. So it was that Hoarah was chosen to be the Elden Lord as the Age of the Erd Tree began. He defeated Marika's enemies, he sired the golden lineage, and then was discarded in favor of Radagon, an Elden Lord who betrayed Marika's enemies and sired more demigod children with her before being shattered alongside his god. And since we don't actually know much about Placidusax's god, we rely on Hoaraloo and Radigan and Marika as well to teach us the things that we should assume would have been traditionally true about her. So it is that Placidusax's god likely chose him as Elden Lord because Placidusax was powerful, politically expedient, loyal, and or perhaps a valid consort. And speaking of Elden Lords being consorts, it's certainly possible that Placidusax consorted with his god, but I don't think that means that all or any of the ancient dragons would have been the result of that union. In fact, as noted by Zully the Witch, the heads of Placidusax are different and are labeled as male and female respectively, so who's to say Placidusax didn't spawn their own ancient dragons? Whatever the case, the ancient dragons were exceptionally loyal to their lord, and multiple item descriptions state that the ancient dragons who ruled in the prehistoric era before the Erd Tree would protect their lord as a wall of living rock. This is why the shape of the dragon has become symbolic of all manner of protections, and indeed we commonly see dragons on shields and on damage reduction talismans. But even without his kin laying down their lives to protect him, Placidusax is intensely powerful in their own right. In fact, I'd say that Placidusax was likely chosen as Elden Lord for their strength in battle. And the physical evidence of battle is all there. Their form is severely scarred, and even his heads have been severed in unknown fights. I think it's fair to speculate that Placidusax put their life on the line for their god, just as Elden Lords would do for their gods in years to come, and just as his ancient dragons did for him. But what exactly is an ancient dragon? To help us distinguish between all of the dragons in the game, it's important to note that not all dragons in Elden Ring are of the ancient variety. Most are actually lesser wyverns like these. Though they're all descended from the same stock, ancient dragons specifically are characterized by their mastery of red lightning, as well as their 4 wings, 4 limbs, and stone scales. These stone scales are perhaps their most defining characteristic. You would have found these stone scales in your playthrough. They would have been looted as gravel stones, which are said to be the scales of the ancient dragons. These gravel stones can be used to craft dragon wound grease, a weapon buff that increases the damage you deal to dragons. It reads, "When the dragons were born from their ancient kin, they lost their stone scales, which can now be used to cause them mortal harm." Talk about insult to injury. So just like in Dark Souls, it's these stone scales that gave the ancient dragons their signature immortality. And as further evidence for that fact, consider the Dragon King's Cragblade, which reveals that today's dual-winged, 2-legged dragons are considered paltry and mortal, again confirming that the ancient dragons were immortal by way of comparison. But why are they immortal? Well, the mechanism behind this immortality is revealed by the ancient dragon smithing stone's description, which marks it as a golden gravel stone and a scale of the ancient dragon lord. Most importantly, though, it reads, "This stone lightly twists time." Therefore, it's Placidusax's very scales, and likely also those of his kin, that have time-twisting properties, explaining the ancient dragon's longevity. It seems they're immune to the effects of time. This also explains why Placidusax's Old Lord's talisman messes with time, lengthening the duration of sorceries and incantations in the hands of the Tarnished. Most interesting, though, is that the smithing stone goes on to state that it allows for the creation of a weapon capable of slaying a god. Presumably, this is because of the scale's time-twisting abilities, which I theorize might help to sort of undo the god that gets smacked with this from existing in the first place. Maybe time undoes them in that way, or perhaps it speeds up their eventual irrelevancy over time. It's really fitting that a god would be weak to time and nothing else, really. Now, scales twisting time is one thing, but all of Farum Azula seems to exist outside of time, to some extent. There is no day and night cycle here, for example, and this time-twisting effect is particularly strong in Placidusax's arena, which you access by lying down at the very edge of his storm. In a way, you kind of become a part of the environment here in this moment, as the space you're lying in is actually a shallow grave meant for entombment. It's just missing a skeleton, whereas the other graves have them. And now that you're part of Farum Azula itself, time stops, then actually begins to bring you backwards in time with the repairing ruins to Placidusax's Forum, where the Dragon Lord once dwelled eternally beyond time. So, time is extremely convoluted in Placidusax's arena. And I say this because it's here, in the heart of the storm beyond time, that you're able to use an item called Miquella's Needle, which is one of the unalloyed gold needles that Miquella crafted to ward away the meddling of outer gods. Now, currently, this needle is only a temporary solution. It only wards off the outer god's influence. It doesn't cure one of it, as Melania is evidence of. Indeed, the final silver version of the needle reveals that the needle is still, as yet, unfinished, and can only be used in the heart of the storm beyond time said to be found in Farum Azula. It's here alone that the needle does finally function fully, removing the entire influence of the outer god in your body. Miquella originally intended to use this needle to repel the outer god of rot within his sister, but here, if you're locked into the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending, you can use the needle to cheat fate and undo the Frenzy god's influence instead. This reveals that the final missing component of the needle is time. It just needs this final time-twisting effect to be complete. So, as with the smithing stones we just mentioned, perhaps you are inserting the needle at a point before the outer god's influence existed upon you, or perhaps the gods are simply, again, weak to time's effects. I wonder if Miquella knew this. I wonder if he knew that time twisting was what was needed to complete the needle. And I wonder if he even realized that this is a place you could come to do that. Anyway, the one weird thing about Miquella's needle is that you can use it in Placidusax's arena even though he's dead, raising the question, hang on, if it's Placidusax's scales that twist time, why is it time is being twisted here in a location, even without him and his scales present? Now, I do have a theory that might reconcile this issue. Remember how I brought up that time only starts moving backwards when you lie down in a burial space and become a part of the environment? Well, my theory is that what if it's the landmass of Farum Azula itself that also twists time? I think it might be able to do this because the landmass literally has ancient dragons and their time-twisting scales entombed within it. The official art book reveals a ton of...
All right. Well, I didn't get a lot of anything fixed. I've still got this eyeball over here. My hair is a work in progress. My desk's still floaty. I think I'm going to watch some tutorials on rigging before I get motion sickness. Thank you for joining us and have a great day. Mwah.